welcome everyone to the 78th anniversary convention of the Central States Numismatic Society. My name is Kevin Foley. I'm the convention chairman. Our presentation today is by Mitch, Ernst, and will be on the general subject of nonprofit fundraising and board governance. Mitch is a former governor of the Central States Numismatic Society, where he served with distinction. This is part of a three seminar presentation that he will be conducting. Yesterday's was absolutely fascinating. I gained a great many new insights from it, and I think everyone here will profit, and their boards and their organization will profit from you being here. So with that, I'll turn the proceedings over to Mitch.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay.
As I said yesterday, and as Kevin just introduced me, I'm Mitch Ernst. I'm a 1984 graduate of Oral Roberts University with my Master's of Divinity. I received a certificate from the University of Nebraska, Omaha, as a certified fundraising manager last fall. The reason I took that course, I went back to school. I am also president of the Omaha Coin Club, president of the Nebraska Numismatic Association. And as Kevin mentioned, I had served on the Central States Board in those various capacities, from small local clubs to state clubs to regional clubs. I saw something that truly amazed me, is that most nonprofits don't know how to operate as a nonprofit. And so I took it upon myself to go back to school and to educate myself and hopefully share with others what I learned to help the hobby in general. Today's program is Understanding Nonprofit Boards, or So You Want to Serve on a Board. Okay. Sadly, this is the sign that should be held up at every election. Instead of a sign that says, "Do not disturb," I need one that says, "Already disturbed, proceed with caution." Sadly, this identifies many nonprofit boards. The nonprofit board versus the executive director, the balance of that can sometimes be a tug of war. This is from CullenLaw.com. They're a nonprofit law firm. I found some interesting information on their site. Running a successful nonprofit takes an active board of directors. We discussed yesterday what active means in a nonprofit board. Engagement does not mean managing. Engagement means fundraising, volunteering, selling the mission of the organization. It takes an active board of directors and a dedicated staff led by a capable executive director. Your nonprofit can be hampered, though, when the board and the executive director steps on each other's toes. So, what are the role of each in the nonprofit? I gave you that handout, and we're kind of going to go over some of these. Boards govern, they do not manage. So often, boards feel that it is their responsibility to oversee the minutia of an organization. And all that does is cripple the effectiveness of their executive officer or whoever they've chosen to run their staff. In general terms, boards provide oversight and guidance to the executive director and the nonprofit staff members. As I mentioned yesterday, oversight and guidance is always about mission. Nonprofits need board members. I said yesterday, they need to memorize the mission. If it takes going to be so elementary as reciting the mission before every board meeting so everyone's on board, so everyone can recite, this is why we're here, this is what we do. Your mission is your identity as a nonprofit. That's why you exist. So mission needs to drive everything you do. The board ensures that the organization stays aligned with its mission and values in addition to complying with federal and state laws. To ensure an influx of new ideas and energy, most nonprofits have limited terms of 4 to 6 years for board members. I found out something interesting in a meeting this morning. Kathy McFadden from ICTA explained that many states have already term limit laws written into their state constitution that organizations need to follow. So organizations need to go check with their own states, wherever they're incorporated at, and see what their state says about term limits for their organization. Let's go see. And in general, the board of directors focus on the big picture and not get lost in the details. Okay, let's go on. Boards have legal oversight. The board ensures that it is operating in accordance with the mission and the purpose for which it was granted tax-exempt status. They're to act as safeguards for the public trust. Board members are responsible for protecting the organization's assets. That does not mean squeezing a penny till it bleeds. What that means is that you're responsible that you don't go off on pet project. You get off the mission. That's what it means. You protect your assets for mission-oriented duties. The board ensures legal and ethical integrity and maintains accountability. Okay, Sam. Management oversight. The board's responsible for ensuring that the nonprofit corporation is being run well. Management oversight does not mean managing. You just oversee the managers. The board selects an executive director and then decides on his or her role. Board should support, this is very important, board supports the executive director and assesses his or her performance. And how do they do that? Not by personal opinions, but outcomes-based evaluations. So often, the problems between a staff member and the board comes in the fact because of personal opinions or someone doesn't feel someone is doing what they should be doing. All these things should have real data, not outcomes-based evaluations. And as I mentioned yesterday, one of the most important things about development or fundraising plan is a plan. And you have to have an outcome planned, and then you have something to judge it by whether you're reaching it or not. So you need, your evaluations of your executive director need to be outcomes-based. The board has power to hire and remove the executive director. I mean, that's how the hierarchy works. But that decision has to be outcomes-based, not based on personal issues, personal vendettas, differences of opinions between board members and the executive director. It has to be outcomes-based. If your executive director is doing what you hired him to do, you don't have to like somebody to work with them. The board is responsible to evaluate itself. That's something I think oftentimes goes neglected. In the organizations I've been associated with, if a board member is disruptive, or if they don't really do anything, I know on the smaller, like local and state level, people run for boards just so they can put it on their business card. Hey, I was the treasurer of such and such club, or I was the vice president of such and such club, and they think it looks good on their business card to give their business credibility. And they don't do anything else for the organization. If they're negative or unsupportive of the mission, they need to be replaced. Again, your organization is its mission. I mean, your mission is your organization. if you have to have it crystal clear, and everyone who comes on your board needs to know we are a mission-oriented organization. Boards are the ambassadors for the organization. If a member does something that would discredit the organization, harm its image, or even if they've fallen ill and unable to continue his or her duties, I know people think, well, you know, they're a friend of mine, or they really, I mean, we're talking about your organization and its ability to fulfill its mission. That person needs to be asked to resign. Again, it needs to be outcomes based. If they are unable to fulfill or unwilling to fulfill their duties, there's a lot at stake for your organization. To allow disruptive, questionable, or unproductive behavior to go unchallenged. I mean, it's not hard to sit down with somebody and say, you know, we really need to all be working together and to accomplish this goal, you know. And I don't think anybody would really take offense at saying, let's work together on something. Now, if you come up and say, you know, you're not doing anything, someone might say, well, but, you know, when you offer it in the way, we're working together, you know, how can I help you do this? Another way, as we mentioned, term limits. This helps a lot of unproductive behavior go away. An elected board versus an appointed board. Most numismatic organizations have elected boards. This can be a problem. An individual can hide their disruptive behavior under the guise of saying, well, I'm just representing the membership. The membership wouldn't want us doing it this way. And what it really is, it's an attempt to get a personal agenda passed under saying, well, this is what I think the membership would not want. This is why mission, clear, crystal, unmistakable mission needs to stay at the forefront of your organization. If you begin that every meeting, every board meeting, everyone reciting that mission, there's no mistake. This is what we're here for. This is what the membership knows we're here for. As I mentioned yesterday, put your mission statement on everything. Put it in your newsletter. Put it on your website. Put it on your business cards. Put it on your envelopes. Have your mission statement. Even if it's just a short quote out of it, let everyone know what your mission is. Because your mission is your case for why someone would want to support you. So keep your mission above everything else. Or it becomes a popularity contest, an election, and an individual can outstay their productivity, and there's no way to remove them because they keep getting elected. Again, term limits helps that. The boards provide financial oversight. Board provides proper financial oversight, including setting and improving an annual budget. The board ensures there are financial resources. Board members are involved in making sure the nonprofit has the money it needs. And how is that done? Making personal donations. I mean, if you really believe in your own vision, why wouldn't you want to support your organization? Organizing fundraising events. Yesterday I mentioned some things that are outside of the box. Not everything for your organization, a numismatic organization, has to be necessarily numismatic related. I said, how about a wine tasting? Call it Coins and Corks. Find a local vineyard. Work with them. How many local breweries are popping up everywhere? Someone has their own little brew. Have a Coins and Kegs night. Or a local concert. Sell t-shirts that go along with it. Coins and Kegs 2017. Kids love that stuff. And plus, you open yourself up to a new audience, and I guarantee someone will come up to you and say, my grandpa had a bunch of coins. I'd be interested in knowing. You're an ambassador. You're able to reach a new audience with a new message, and you could help this person find out what to do or what their coins are actually worth. Okay. They're responsible for program oversight. The board ensures that programs are in place to further, again, the mission and goals of the organization. Know your mission. I know it sounds repetitive, but you are your mission, and you need to have that at the forefront of everything you do. Okay. The role of the executive director, while the boards oversee organizations, many times the board will hire a key staff person to execute the policies, programs, and initiatives. The executive director is more involved than the board in the day-to-day operations. Staff management. This is what the executive director does: hires, supervises, and motivates the staff. And you know what? Sometimes it's hard to motivate the staff when they feel the board is not supportive. So the staff can tell if a board is supported or not. So that's why it helps the executive director if the board is on the same page as he. Development and management of policies and programs. The executive director works with the staff to develop policies and guide the organization and programs to fulfill its charitable purpose. I received a survey recently, and they said, well, as a board member, what policies would you want to see put into place to reverse this or change that? And my answer to the survey was, I don't believe that's a board responsibility. I said, there's staff to do that. Let them make up the policies. Let them figure out what they want to do and how to do it. And then the board can evaluate it and say, yeah, go with that, or don't. Okay. The executive director is the liaison between the board directors and the staff. You get in trouble when your staff feels a board member comes up and wants them to start doing personal errands for them or different things like that. Shared responsibilities. Okay. Strategic plan. The board and executive director work together to create the plan to guide the organization. In very few of the organizations I've been involved with, they don't have a plan. Their plan is, let's see if we can have enough money to buy donuts for next month's meeting, or, I mean, some clubs are struggling to that point. But if you don't look ahead, even looking ahead to see how will we dissolve this thing if we have to. So you always need a plan. They work together, the board and the executive director, in fundraising. They develop plans to ensure that the organization has the resources needed to fulfill this plan. Okay? And the board, the executive director, implement evaluations periodically to ensure that we're staying true to the mission and we're being effective. Outcomes. How are our outcomes that we're planning for? Typical flowchart. We all know what they look like. The problem comes in when this person, this entity is non-productive. So this person feels they need to do this and start giving this group ideas. And then this group feels threatened. And the next thing you know, your whole organization's in trouble. Okay. This is a short little 8-minute video. I hope you can hear it. It's very good.
Over the last 2 decades, there's so much written about the board of directors and what the board of directors should be doing. And yet, we still run into so many people who are sitting on boards and wondering and questioning what is supposed to be doing. I sat on my first board at the age of 19 and had no training at all. Nobody sat me down and said, hey, here's the job that you're assigned to. Now, it wasn't until many years later that I began to study under Peter Drucker that I began to understand the enormous responsibilities I had taken on by agreeing to join the board of directors. Now today, as we sit here, there are over 12 million Americans serving on a board of directors, and probably down to another 2 to 3 million empty board seats that can be filled. So about 5% of the population is presently sitting on a nonprofit board. So what are the essential elements to being a great board member? Well, there are 9 things you really need to focus on. Boards should be focused on as their chief job in a governing board. First and foremost, not surprisingly, is mission. Why does this organization exist in the first place? What's the reason for being? And the board coming back on a periodic basis to answer the question, is this mission still relevant to the community? 2 years ago, we worked with an organization, a 40-year-old organization, providing mental health services that came to the conclusion that over the years, their services had become redundant and that there was no longer a purpose for the organization, and it would be best if they decided to close their doors and transfer a few selected programs over to other providers. And of course, there's always the classic case of the March of Dimes that was originally established to combat polio. And then once polio was defeated, the leadership came back and reinvented the organization to address all childhood crippling diseases. Now, of course, once you set the mission, the next step is to set the strategy. How is the organization going to pursue that mission? What combination of programs and activities are going to be launched in order to carry out that mission of the organization? It is in this step that you do your strategic planning, but you also want a board to always engage into strategic thinking, not just a once a year or once every couple of years exercise, but a constant look at the strategy of the organization to make mid-course corrections. This should be ongoing in a board's discussion. Once we've set the strategy, we want to execute the strategy, and we usually leave that to the province of an executive director. Our job as a board member is to hire, supervise, and if need be, dismiss the executive director. The legalities here are critical. There's emerging literature coming out talking about the weakness of boards in overseeing and supervising the executive director, and we're starting to see some legal cases where a board member and a director had outside business interests that developed as a conflict of interest for the organization, never disclosed, and as the organization got into trouble, it created all sorts of legal problems for the board. It also requires a routine evaluation of the director. We've seen a number of organizations where the director has not been evaluated by the board for 4 or 5 years. If malfeasance were to take place in the organization and your insurance company came in and took a look at that and said, well, you've not been properly overseeing and supervising the board, they can cancel your insurance. Next critical area for the board to look at is to monitor the outcomes of the organization. All right, you have this mission, you've set the strategy for it, you've hired somebody to put it in place to execute that strategy. Now you're going to want to monitor on a consistent basis, are the programs and efforts of the energy we're putting out, is it effective, doing what we want to do? And also, how do we know that? What's the quantitative data that we're using to monitor whether these programs are effective? With a decent set of programs, you're also responsible for securing the resources necessary to carry out that programming. That means, of course, no money, but it also means volunteers, people, it means partners, strategic partners, whatever it needs to take in order to pursue the mission of the organization and to carry out that effective programming. Do note that 40% of the time when 2 nonprofits engage in formal collaborative activities, the genesis of that came from board-to-board contact, not between staff and staff or staff and a board member. It came between board members from different organizations having a conversation and realizing they have common interests, and then that led to joint programming. And it's not only the securing the resources, it's actually making sure those resources are used efficiently. Now, this is just not about making sure the budget's balanced. It's taking a look at the organization's processes, its infrastructure, how the resources are being used and deployed, and whether that makes sense. We work with a lot of organizations that have antiquated computer systems or computer networks, which creates a lot of duplicity, a lot of downtime, a lot of slow processes, and it's an area where it's grossly inefficient. And it should be the board's responsibility looking at that saying we need to correct that inefficiency so that we get the maximum use out of our staff and the money that we're putting into it. So not only do you ensure efficiency, but you also need to ensure legality. Everything that happens in the organization is your responsibility in the legal framework. So it's up to you to make sure that all the affairs of the organization are conducted in ethical, legal manner. All the proper paperwork is filed, forms like your corporation papers, state, charitable bureau license, the IRS 990, that falls to the responsibility of the board to file those reports. Also pay attention to the human resource function. 50% of the time, if legal action is taken against the board, it's usually a wrongful termination suit that's filed by a former employee. So it's important that you also oversee that HR function and make sure that all those legalities be taken care of. So essentially, there's no higher authority than the board. The buck stops with you. And it's also critical not just to be looking inwards, but to be looking outwards. And this is our responsibility to enhance the brand, to network the organization into the larger community, into the larger society. We have to have the ability to go out and talk about the organization, talk about the issues that are facing the organization, talk about the issues that are facing the client, the regulatory environment, the trends, so that we can engage others, engage our friends, our colleagues, our coworkers into what's happening in the organization. So we need to expand the playing field, expand the brand. And that's our responsibility as board members. And finally, we're in a leadership role. So it's our responsibility to develop the next generation of leadership and to develop the leaders that are sitting around us. This means that this is the process we're involved in the recruitment and orientation and mentoring of new board members. We are out there as we're networking the organization. We're also looking for talent that we think may fit well into our leadership. And also, we are ensuring that the people we have sitting around the table are getting the professional development they need to be the best leaders they can be. One of the things we look for when we go in and do an organizational analysis is, do you have a budget line for professional development for board members? If they're our most important people, what are we investing in our most important people? So if that budget line is not there, that raises the question, are we investing at all? So where you can start with this information is with your fellow board members. Are they aware of their 9 essential responsibilities? As you go and talk to others about their potential joining the board, are they aware of the work that's involved? And for our current board members, are there areas they feel they need to be strengthened on? Can we bring in resources to help them be better leaders? As a member of the partnership, we have services to help you, training and planning, group facilitation, the executive development, working with your board presidents, a whole host of resources we can bring to help your board be the best that it can be.
I know this sounds like, wow, this is a lot more than what, for my simple coin club or my organization. But there's ideas and principles that we can pick. We can cherry pick some of this information and apply it to what we're doing. Our hobby's at a crossroads. And the long-time membership is dying off. I hate to say it, but it is. And we will no longer have their resources available to us to fund our ongoing work. I come from a couple know of a couple organizations that I think they would be just as happy if the longtime members were dying off. They said, well, let it die with me. They don't really care about the future. But as leadership now, we have to care. And we need to recruit people and find people who also believe in the mission enough to want it to go on. And that's basically what a lot of what development and nonprofit management is about. Board recruitment. I know in many of the clubs, you find somebody and you say, hey, I think you'd be good on this board. Where the disconnect happens, at least for me, was what's expected. They show up for their first meeting and wow, they have no idea. Let people know what they're getting themselves into. let them know of their responsibilities. I think a lot of organizations, it wouldn't hurt to draw up a manual and say board member manual, not just when the meetings are or the past minutes and stuff like that or what's on the agenda. Real world responsibilities. This is how much work is involved. How much time is it going to take for you in this volunteer role? Board training. One organization, I was told the best training I could have is just keep my mouth shut and just listen for a while. Now, to me, that's not really training, but that was what was offered. Training is beneficial to smooth board operation and smooth interactions with management. If you don't let people know what their responsibilities are, they might start thinking, well, you know, I can start doing whatever I want. I'm on the board. You know, well, that's not the case. Boards are the sausage makers of your nonprofit. Donald Rumsfeld, I have a quote from him: sausage making and policy making shouldn't be seen close up. The individual ingredients may not sound appealing, but the end product is. And this is what we can do with boards, you know. Sometimes the support of everything of your organization don't need to know all the minutia. They don't need to know all the details of what's going on. They're just interested, are you fulfilling your mission? Are you meeting a need for us? Are you satisfying what you told us your mission is? And so that's all they really need to know. You know, you can make your sausage at your board meetings. Okay, next. Obligations. The obligations of being on a nonprofit board, being a nonprofit board member, can be boiled down to the time-tested adage: work, wisdom, and wealth, or I like to say time, talent, and treasure. The standard is each board member picks 2, optimally 3, from that list. And when they come to the board, when they're being recruited, saying, well, I have time and talent, I'm a little short here. Or some guy can come in and say, you know, I can make a lot of donations and I can give you a lot of insight from my business dealings, but I don't have a lot of time. You know, work with the mix. You know, use what people have. And if they believe in your mission, use it. In my seminary days, it was referred to as stewardship. It's giving back what God has given you: time, talent, and treasure. Okay. Sadly, this is a lot of people's view of stewardship. When it comes to giving, some people stop at nothing. Okay. You want to click it again, please? We'll end this part of it with a quote by Albert Einstein. We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used that we created them. Haven't we all been there? Okay, Sam, click again, please. The problems that face numismatic organizations are real. We're facing a changing world, but I think we can adapt to it. I handed out a flyer yesterday. 87% of millennials give. That was a shock to me. But they give on their own terms and in their own way. And how do they do it? You want to hold up your phone? This is their world. And we need to relate to that world, okay? It takes a dedicated board to recognize and evaluate their own organization's problems and challenges, and then work to find the solutions for them. Sadly, a lot of the problems we face, they're self-inflicted. but we can still find healing in the same way. We can find a balm, healing balm, if we just work hard and put some nonprofit tactics to practice. Okay, next. We'll just take a short break, and I have just a few other slides on the other side of the break. So if anyone has any questions, yes?
Mitch, you made reference to the concept of the self-inflicted problem. And I've heard someone express it by stating that in some instances, board members are both the arsonist and the fireman. And I think what was meant by that is that a fantasy problem is created, and the disruptive board member then becomes the only person who is smart enough to suggest the solution to the problem that they themselves created. Could you comment on that a bit? Is this a fundamental deficiency in some organizations?
I think you can find that problem in many organizations, just not nonprofit. I mean, wow. What a way to climb the ladder of success by solving all of your own problems and then telling your boss how great you are at being a problem solver. It's easy to solve a problem that you already know the answer to before you create it. So yes, I do think it's epidemic in some situations. I think it is worse in an elected board situation because there is less control over who gets in the board, and in an elected board situation rather than an appointed board, many times an elected official finds himself, this is their one opportunity to be in leadership of something, and they want to use it for their own self-aggrandizement. I hate to say it, but and so. Any other questions? Okay. Anybody? Should we just press on? Okay. This is from the course I took at the University of Nebraska. I won't go through reading everything myself. I'll let you read a lot of it. These are the legal duties of board members. According to nonprofit corporation law, a board member should meet certain standards of conduct and attention to his or her responsibilities to the organization. You know, before you have someone nominated for your board for an election, they should know that. They are referred to as the duty of obedience, duty of care, and duty of loyalty. Obedience is just to the central purpose of the organization, and again, duty, you could say duty of obedience to its mission. Am I being obedient to what the mission of this organization is? Duty of care. This is just taking care of your organization. Are you doing what's responsible and caring for the responsibility that you have? Oversight of financial matters, even just the reading of minutes, attention to issues that are of concern to the organization, raising questions whenever there is something that seems unclear or questionable. Duty of loyalty, conflicts of interest. Sadly, some board members use their position to try to overthrow the current leadership or whatever, so that then they have an inward conflict of interest. They're not working for the mission, they're working for themselves. They want to use your organization to fulfill their own personal needs. What are the strengths of your board? Look at number one. understanding and supporting the mission. What's the other strength of your board? What's the relationship between the board and the executive director? Yesterday I made the comment, fundraising is friend making. You know, people know when you're trying to use them just to get some money. But if they're your friend, they'll do anything for you. Friends will want to help you. But friendship takes a long time to develop. And here again, it's a relationship between your board and the executive director. No one wants to feel like they're being used. The board doesn't want to feel like they're being used by the executive director. And the executive director doesn't want to feel like he's being used by the board. He's been charged with something to do. The board should just let him do it. How's your strength of your board in evaluating your programs? Again, outcomes based. If you're holding seminars or conferences, what are the outcomes of those events? Are they being positive? Are they strengthening your organization? Do they need to be evaluated and see if something can be changed? Grant making. To be honest, the modern day grant process is brutal. If you want your organization to do grants, wow. You'll get an application that thick, and it has to be filled out. They'll give you 3 or 4 pages of exactly how they want it filled out, because these foundations, they get so many requests. You have to follow every letter down to the line, and the grant process is brutal. And part of the grant process is they want to see a financial accountability. They want to see how much of your own board is on board with your mission and what you're doing. So personally, for numismatic organizations, grants, I think, wow, it would be hard to do. Financial oversight. How's your board at financial oversight? And a lot of times, when we hear the term financial oversight, we think, are we spending too much money? There's another side to that coin, pardon the phrase. Are we raising enough funds? Are we funding our programs to the best of our ability? Strategic planning. How would you rate the strength of your board in having a plan? How would you rate the strength of your board in the selection and orientation of board members? You know, is it the old shotgun approach? You know, you just throw out enough and it'll hit somebody, or, you know, you throw something against the wall and whatever sticks. Well, there's our new board member, you know. So how would you rate your organization in the selection and orientation that you give a new board member after they're on board? How would you rate the strength of your organization's board and staff relationship? Are you working towards a common goal? Or are you constantly bickering about how it should be done? That's why you need a plan. That's why you need something in writing. That's why you need it just crystal clear what your mission is, how you're going to accomplish it. So there's no question. You can't have someone come in. A new board member may come on, well, I think it should be done this way. Well, I'm sorry, this is what our mission is, and this is how it's been laid out. Now, that doesn't mean it can never be changed or reevaluated, but oftentimes these board and staff relationships can be solved by just having things in concrete. How's your public relations and advocacy for your organization? Are you reaching out, or are you just preaching to the choir? You know, is your audience, have you determined your audience, or are you, like I mentioned with the coins and kegs night, or coins and, you know, there's a lot of avenues to reach out to the world around us that we may not be taking advantage of. Golf outings. Man, how many nonprofits have a golf outing? A dinner with a guest speaker. You know, I mean, and then while I'm on dinners and guests, when I took my course, they were shocked. You could literally hear the jaws drop in the floor when I mentioned how many free dinners and events were offered by organizations in the numismatic world. People they need to view, instead of getting something from your organization, they have to realize, I want to support your mission by buying a ticket to that dinner. Give them the opportunity to give instead of just letting them take all the time. How would you rate the strength of your board in its board structure and organizations? Okay. Basic responsibilities of nonprofit board. Again, number 1, mission and purpose. Select your chief executive. Notice what number 3 is. Support the chief executive. Not argue with, not try to always constantly correct. Support. Give your chief executive an environment that he can thrive in, that he wants to work harder for you. You'd be amazed at how creative they probably would become if they didn't feel they were always being either criticized or having to watch their back. But that does not mean you don't assess their performance. Again, outcomes based. Ensure that there's planning. Ensure that there are resources. And again, I know so many people, they say adequate resources, and that means not spending anything. Sometimes a board has to invest in their own organization to see a return. And you don't invest by holding back. You invest by giving to your own work. Manage your resources effectively. Determine, monitor, and strengthen your programs and services. If your programs aren't working, evaluate them. See what you can do different. If you see a steady decline in the clients who are wanting to partake of something you're offering, or if you offer something at a high expense and only 3 or 4 people come and you lose a lot of money each time, as I said, losing money on events doesn't necessarily show how charitable you are. It shows that you don't necessarily know how to fund it properly. One of the basic responsibilities of a nonprofit board, enhancing the organization's public standing. Sell your brand. You know, I mean, wow, there's a lot of opportunities to sell a cool brand. Be creative. Bring a brand person in. Have them discuss with you some of their ideas. I mean, sometimes we get stuck in a world where, you know, we don't, we're kind of constricted upon ourselves. Another responsibility, ensure legal and ethical integrity and maintain accountability for your board. And lastly, recruit and orient new board members and assess and let the board assess themselves. I know it's not easy, but you know, it's not easy looking in the mirror sometimes. But we all need to. Okay. Individual board member responsibilities. I know this is very academic today and it's not a lot of fun or a lot of things, but these are all things that I feel that boards need to know. Individual board member responsibilities, general expectations. Know the organization's mission, purpose, goals, policies, programs, services, strengths, and needs. What's the responsibility of an individual board member? Suggest new nominees for the board. Hey, you know, I know this guy. He'd be awesome. We all have a sphere of influence. Serve in leadership positions or undertake special assignments when asked. Avoid prejudiced judgments on the basis of information received from individuals and urge those with grievances to follow the established policies. Follow trends of the organization's fields of interest. What are the trends in numismatics right now? We're in a big world and we need to keep up with it. What are the trends in numismatics? Uh-oh. God forbid, bring a sense of humor to the board's deliberation. You know, just because sometimes we're about serious business and keeping our organizations in the right direction is a serious thing, you can do it with a sense of humor. Meetings. Prepare for and participate in board and committee meetings and other organizational meetings. Ask questions, but let them be, you know, appropriate. You know, some people can just keep bringing up, you know, how come we don't have ice for the water? You know, that type of thing. You know what I mean? Maintain confidentiality. Speak on behalf of the board when asked to do so by authorized persons. If a board member gets an invitation to speak to an organization, you know, go out there and sell it. Be a salesman for your organization. Sell your group. And suggest agenda items periodically for the board and committees to ensure that policy-related matters are being addressed. Okay, can you scroll down a little, or up? Relationship with staff. Counsel the executive director as appropriate and offer support. You know, you never see in any of these things about the executive director and the relationship with the board be overly critical. Always tell him how he can be doing his job better. It's always supportive. And supportive can also mean, I think this is a better way we can do it. You can still offer suggestions, but there's a difference between being critical and offering a supportive suggestion. Avoid asking for special favors from the staff without consulting the executive director. You know, don't, oh, can you make me a pot of coffee? You know how that goes. Avoid conflict. Serve the organization as a whole. See the big picture rather than special interest groups. As a board member, you're big picture. You're not to be concentrated on the minutia. That's what you have your staff for. If you need someone to do, you know, be in charge of one area or something, that's why you hire them to do it. Board members are big picture. Again, avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest. And if you even feel there might be one, or someone else feels it, just address it to the board. It doesn't need to be a big firestorm of trouble. Just bring it up. Just say, hey, what do you think about this? As a board member, maintain your independence and objectivity. You know, look at things with fairness and integrity. Never accept or offer favors or a gift from anyone who does business with the organization. Hey, you know, I can get you a great deal if you do this for us. You know, no. Fiduciary responsibility. Exercise prudence in the board in the control and transfer of funds. Faithfully read and understand the financial statements. Part of that means is having someone being able to prepare the statements that everyone can read and understand. If you don't have the proper staff member here, how can you ever understand what you really have? So if you expect the board to be able to faithfully read and understand the financial statements, you need to have someone on staff who can actually prepare something that can be read and understood. And fundraising. An individual, I know it's a hot topic right now, it's real trendy, fundraising and all that. It is the industry standard that board members are involved in fundraising. They should give a gift of some sort and according to the personal means. Assist the development committee. A development committee just is the fundraising committee or whatever. By implementing strategies through personal influence with corporations, foundations, or other individuals, you know. But I know a lot of people think this is just trendy. This is the industry standard in nonprofits. Board members help raise funds. This is your CEO's lifestyle, life cycle, lifestyle. Again, so much in fundraising and development and nonprofit, it's just about common sense about what you would do in a relationship. Your courtship, you always show them your best side in your courtship. You know, and then the marriage, you learn to live with each other. You learn each other little shortcomings and habits, you know. Well, maybe we should have 2 separate bathrooms instead of 1, you know, so you don't have to worry about the toothpaste. The honeymoon, your first crisis, what you plan for your family, or in this case, your organization, your anniversaries, and then how do you move on? How do you move on from those big events in your life? Oh. This is the nonprofit organization life cycle. I found this very interesting. And tell me if I'm wrong, but this is where most numismatic organizations find themselves right now. A board of organizing board of volunteers follow the leader, the board leads, the board controls, over to a volunteer governing model where it's moving from the volunteer model to the staff model. Most organizations, I feel right now, are right in this dead zone. They're trying to understand, because this is the glorious past. This is the numismatic glory days in the days of old when everything could be done without staffs, without anything. We had all the wonderful volunteers we would ever need. Coin clubs were bustling. We had membership galore. Shows were huge. Ladies' luncheons. We had banquets. You know, it's not that way anymore. But because many boards want to hang on to those days, they're stuck in this dead zone, and they can never move to moving from the volunteer model to a staff model. And then the life cycle moves on from the staff model to mature fundraising, where your staff is involved with the organization, planning, with development programs, learning how to run the organization. And then when you have the plan and you have everything going, you have the mature fundraising. And then you go on, after you're established, then you start working on your board renewal. Okay. This is what boards expect executive directors to do. Serve as chief operations executive for the organization. Be an advisor to the board. Now, if your board is always thinking that your CEO is self-serving, do you think they'll ever listen to anything that CEO has to say? No. Get those board members out of there and get a board that's supportive of the person you've hired to carry out your mission. How many executive officers does an organization have to go through before they figure out it isn't an executive officer problem, it's a board problem. Find a board that supports your mission by supporting the executive officer. They expect the executive director to recommend appropriate policies. Again, I received a survey saying, you know, as a board member, what policies would you recommend that we do? My simple answer was, I don't think that's a board job. That's why you have a staff. Let the staff come up with the policies. Then let the board consider them and evaluate them. But it's not the board's job to recommend policies or to present policies. The board can talk to the executive director and say, hey, let's think about this, but then let the executive director draw up the policy and bring it back to the full board. The CEO should implement the policies adopted by the board, inform the board fully and accurately regarding the programs, interpret the needs of the programs, and present professional recommendation on all problems. I know in some numismatic organizations you have different committees, and so each little committee chair thinks they're the king of the kingdom. And that, well, this is my committee. This is what we need. This is what we do. Well, I'm sorry. That committee is still part of this organization. And that committee has to, if the CEO needs to approve all that's going on in all that. The CEO develops the budget. And it keeps the board up to date on budget problems. The executive director recruits the best personnel and develops a competent staff, and then let them supervise it. The board does not need to micromanage those things. The board should spend their time friend making, building relationships, selling the organization. CEO devotes time to improving the staff and assists the board in developing and conducting community information programs. Selling your brand to the community, okay? And what's a numismatic community? Coin collectors. They don't necessarily have to be local or even current members or even near you. A lot of specialty clubs reach out all around the country. You know, even though their meetings may not be anywhere near a certain member where they live, they reach out to their community. The executive director expects the board will do these things: counsel and advise giving the benefit of its judgment, expertise, and familiarity with local settings. Consult with the executive on all matters which the board is considering. Notice that's consult. Delegate responsibility for all executive functions. Refrain from handling the administrative details. Make the staff responsible to the executive director. Don't let your staff get in the habit of running to the board if they get unhappy. You know, say, well, you need to go talk to your boss about that. And then let the board talk to the boss. But, you know, if the boss brings it before the board, then that's what, but don't let your staff start getting in the habit of running to the board. Again, provide support to the executive director and staff in carrying out their duties. You don't need to be critical of how they do their jobs. You know, an evaluation of something and encouraging someone how to do it better, support them in what they're doing. Support the executive director in all decisions and actions consistent with the policies of the board and the standards of the organization. Hold the executive director accountable for the supervision of the organization and evaluate the work of the executive director. Okay. 18. Are you guys going to hang with me through all this? Noteworthy rules for board members. Attend your board meetings. You know, that's why you ran, right? I mean, that's why you're on the board. Attend the board meetings. Make sure the organization keeps written permanent record of all board minutes and official actions. Exercise in general supervision over the organization's affairs. Investigate and audit the organization's major or controversial decisions. Inform yourself before participating in decision making. Use both concrete information and data, and a great deal of common sense. Again, no personal vendettas, not opinions. Let's use some outcomes. Let's use things that we can understand, and concrete, something that's concrete that we can point to. You know, pay attention to warning signs that may come to your attention that something wrong. You see, if you see another board member kind of starting to act a little squirrely about stuff, you know, just keep an eye and make sure that, you know, that he's still on board, that he still believes in the mission, and that he's there for the big picture. I don't need to probably go through all these things. Require the organization engage a professional auditing service, preferably a CPA. Require the organization to consult legal counsel as indicated by prudent management in its founding, when they have a crisis, or if they're doing something complicated. Make sure you have every T crossed and I dotted. Require reports at the directors' meetings of all committees. Okay, could you scroll down a little bit, bring that up? Authorize only appropriate indebtedness. Know all directors and officers. Know who you're working with. Again, friend making. You know, this should be fun. We're volunteering for a mission that we believe in, that we love, that has brought great joy to our lives. And we're on a board with a bunch of people who say the same thing. What don't we have in common? Avoid conflict of interest. Oh, I missed one. Avoid self-serving policies. These are board responsibilities. Again, remember. See that the organization maintains a good credit and financial standing. Make sure you have the proper insurance. And just make sure that you have the full responsibility in the management of the organization. Okay. Now these are the rights of volunteer board members. You guys hanging with me through all this? I hope you can, because like I said, cherry pick what you can use for your organization. You know, not everything is applicable to you personally, but you might find something and say, wow, that can help me. Be fully informed about what your responsibilities, what the time commitment, what it's going to take before you accept a position on a board. You know what you're getting yourself into. What's the right of a volunteer board member? To have an opportunity for orientation and continuing board training. Just because you get elected to the board doesn't mean you're the smartest person in the room. There needs to be continuing training on your role and your responsibility and your jobs as a board member. Another right of a volunteer board member, to be fully informed through accurate financial reports, not stuff that's kind of skewed to make a point for a board member that might be kind of worried that you're spending too much. Yes?
Mitch, do you know of any numismatic organization that provides ongoing or any training to
No.
elected board members?
No. None whatsoever.
That's a very interesting answer.
I can't think of any.
Any?
Not that I know of. I mean, training, I mean,
Like
this.
Like what you're doing here.
Right. Having consultants come in, talk to you about your responsibilities, talk to you about the trends in nonprofits. I mean, if you're the most important person, to the organization because you're on the board, if you hold the most important position, doesn't that person deserve some training and some ongoing attention? Where was I at? The board training. Oh, and the accurate financial reports. Expect that your volunteer time will not be wasted by lack of planning, coordination, and cooperation within the organization. To be assigned jobs that are worthwhile and challenging with freedom to exercise your skill. Don't have an attorney on your board and put them in charge of the YN committee or something. I mean, make their committee appointments appropriate for their knowledge. Use what they bring. One of my greatest frustrations serving on board, people kept wanting to throw me into places where I had no expertise or no knowledge. And what good does that do? It just made me frustrated. And I didn't add anything to the organization because I had no expertise in that field. So why put people in that position? What's your right as a volunteer board member? You can decline an assignment. I was told once by a president of an organization, if I didn't like what he told me to do, I could quit. Guess what I did? You have the right to decline an assignment if it doesn't match your skills or your interests, or you don't think it's appropriate. To have a successful job experience that provides opportunities for personal growth. This is a right of a board member. Have a successful experience on the board that provides opportunities for your own personal growth. You're not supposed to go home at night and cry in your pillow because people are such nuts. Well, I mean, really. I was talking to Karen there in the back. This is a fun hobby. How do we manage to keep getting in our own way to such a point we're all so miserable? This is supposed to be a right of a board member to have a successful job experience on the board. To be trusted with confidential information that will help the board member carry out assignments and responsibilities. That isn't keeping a notebook on your other board members so you can use it against them later on in life. No, confidentiality doesn't mean you keep notebooks on people so that you can. No, you keep the confidential info. This is the sausage making. You don't have to let everyone knows about the pig snouts that are in your organization. Keep it confidential. I'm sorry. This is all getting a little too personal for me. To know whether the volunteer work is effective and what the results have been obtained. What's worse than putting a whole bunch of time and energy into something and feeling nothing was accomplished? That's a right of a volunteer board member to know that your volunteer work has been effective and the results have been obtained. But you can't do that if you don't have outcomes assigned, if you don't know what you want your outcomes to be. To be another right of a volunteer board member to be recognized at appropriate times for your work and involvement as a board member. Pat somebody on the back. Wow, you're an asset. You're awesome. We're glad you're here. Role and function of a board of directors. 6, primary responsibility. Appointing, supporting, you notice it doesn't say appoint, and then constantly criticizing, no, appointing, supporting, and evaluating your executive officer. And then maintain the appropriate relationship. Just because you're on the board doesn't mean you're the smartest person in the room. You have an executive director that you've hired, that you've told to do a job, let him do it. Planning and setting direction and policy, mission statement, long-range plans and goals, set policies, personal policy, conflict of interest, that type of stuff. Evaluating your performance, monitor if you're adhering to your mission and long-range plan. Really, how many people do you know involved in numismatic organizations that there are any long-range plans? What do we want to accomplish by existing? It doesn't have to be world-changing. It doesn't have to be, something that'll set people's hair on fire. It just, hey, we want to keep our local club, we want to have monthly meetings, we want to educate our members, we want to share our education with the community, we want to support our local museums if they have numismatic collection. Simple things like that can be done even on the local level. Role and function of a board of directors, fund development, raising money, participating in fundraising events. Hey, what board member wouldn't want to go to the Coins and Kegs event, right? Personal financial contribution, and use your contacts on behalf of agency. Use your you have a lot of friends. Share your passion for your organization with them and ask them if they'd like to get involved. You're responsible, the role and function, fiscal management, selecting, training, and notice here, training and retaining board members. Member and director has 2 roles. This is what is different in a appointed board compared to an elected board. They get to pick their successors. We necessarily don't always do that or have the opportunity to. Sadly, it's a popularity vote a lot of times. They may not be compatible with your organization at all, but if your membership votes them in, that's why it's so important to have that guide when they come in and say, this isn't all about you. I'm sorry. This is about our organization. This is about our mission. They have to know that they have a schedule of activities. Wouldn't you hate to be on this board? 10 board meetings a year. Monthly committee meetings. Would this be a bad thing? Annual board retreats where you have to go all hang out and learn to live with each other for a while. Again, attend approximately 3 agency events. These are just, a gala for the board, salute to family. This is not something that's probably applicable to a numismatic organization, but a bigger charity type board, a hospital, a university, that type of thing. Role and function of a board of directors: mission-driven, involved in governance, not management. Act as an official body. Act as a body, not as individuals. Act as a body. And have appropriate contact with staff. The function and role of the board: focused on the future. Hire the most qualified executive director to carry out your plans, goals, and objectives. But assess it. Say, hey, this is why outcome-based goal setting is very important, because you have outcomes you want to reach, and then you can say, well, are we getting there? Function of the role: be active in fundraising and represent your organization to the community, and represent the community to your agency. What's the numismatic community? The dealers, collectors. A numismatic board should represent their organization to that numismatic community. This is a traditional structure of a nonprofit. The president, the vice president, we all know how that goes. And these are the committees that they had in this program. The planning committee, a development committee, a finance committee, a nominating and board development committee. Isn't that interesting? That's where the board gets their training. You have a board development committee that talks about new board member orientations, the ongoing development, education, and board evaluation of board members. A marketing committee, and an ad hoc committee. Okay. This is the worksheet you have there with you. So we're at the end of this. Thank you for hanging with me. This is a lot of information in a shorter period of time, but I felt it was important to share it. Does anyone have any questions?